You are listening to the Aging Starts Now podcast, where it's all about responding with confidence to the legal, financial, and personal challenges created by a disability, unexpected illness, or aging in general. Join us weekly as elder law attorneys Barbara McGinnis and Chris Johnson, along with other members of the Johnson McGinnis Elder Care Law and Estate Planning team, talk about the tools, techniques, strategies, and services that will make the elder care journey easier for everyone involved. Get ready, because aging starts now.
Welcome to Aging Starts Now, the podcast from Johnson McGinnis Elder Care Law and Estate Planning, where we help families navigate the challenges and opportunities that come with aging. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, attorney and partner here at Johnson McGinnis Elder Care Law. Today, we're talking about a topic that touches nearly every family at some point in their life: home ownership, mortgage planning, and how housing decisions can impact your long-term financial well-being. Joining me, we are very fortunate to have Anna Cook, Originating Branch Manager with CrossCountry Mortgage, LLC. Anna has extensive experience helping individuals and families navigate the mortgage process, whether they're purchasing a first home, refinancing, downsizing, or exploring ways to leverage home equity as part of a broader financial plan. Anna, thank you so much for sharing your time and joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here and to share my knowledge and experience with your audience.
Wonderful. Well, let's get started. I think the best thing we should kick off is, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that older adults have about downsizing and financing a new home?
So I think at least right now in this market, the biggest misconceptions is that they have to sell their current home before they can buy, which creates some hurdles at times, especially when relocating. The second is, and it's very common when a client comes to me and they're a last time seller or they're downsizing, is that they think that they should pay cash for their final home. Those would be the two biggest areas where we're discussing strategies around their finances.
So the first one you mentioned, that's what's known as a contingency sale, correct?
Yes, sir. So it's very common to create a contingency that you're going to buy the new home that you're downsizing to. And the contingency is you have to sell that home first in order to buy the second home.
Okay. And we've been very blessed here in Middle Tennessee. I guess it depends which side of the equation you're on, but home prices, home values have gone up. And for sellers, that's been amazing. But have you seen contingency sales just in general dip? It seemed like the market was so hot at one point that sellers just were like, listen, we can't wait around for a contingency sale.
So every market has a different perspective on a sale of home contingency. And I'll speak to the Middle Tennessee market right now. Homes are taking about 30 to 45 days before they're seeing active buyers put in an offer, which is actually still below the national average over the last 3 to 4 decades. But because of that, everyone is wanting to see, could the home buyer remove that sale of home contingency where they could purchase the new home before the other home sells? Because what happens is, if you've got timelines for people when they're trying to sell and buy, there's a lot of unknowns around those timelines, and they want to see that they know that the buyers coming in could buy the home regardless of what is happening in the market. And that creates a new strategy for someone who's selling, especially if they're selling in a different market than the Nashville market. Got
it. Okay, so what if someone has found their perfect home and their current home hasn't sold yet? What are the financing options that are available for those retirees who might have a good amount of wealth, but they don't have a lot of income?
So there's two different factors there, and I'll speak to buying the home first. So a lot of my retirees are liquid somewhere, whether it's in a checking and savings account, some sort of brokerage account, some sort of investment account. And mind you, we always want to protect any sort of penalties. We want to protect any sort of costs to this. But let's say someone finds a house. This actually happened for us with some clients who were moving to be closer to their grandkids, which is a very common reason why people are moving. And their home here was in Tennessee, and they were moving to South Carolina. Well, they had funds available that were ready and liquid that didn't have a penalty to use, and they were able to put a smaller down payment on the house they wanted in South Carolina. Now, their goal was when their home sold to call me back, and then we were going to look at their strategies and do something called a recast, where they're able to take additional funds from the sale of their home, replace the funds they used from their liquid cash, and put more money down to lower that payment to the ideal monthly payment for their retirement. And they can do this with a recast. It's not a refinance. It doesn't change the terms of the loan. It simply allows them to restructure the principal balance over the same amount of time and lower that payment to what's ideal for their income now. And it's very easy. It takes usually between $200 or $300 to do in about 6 weeks, but it allows for the client to not have to refinance, not have to change the term and pay extra closing costs, but to really structure their mortgage where they could be comfortable once everything settles, but they can secure that dream home near the grandkids, take it off the market, and actually move in and get settled and get the house prepped the right way to sell with a lot of peace and ease. And that's what a lot of our downsizers need right now.
I love that. Am I safe to say that a lot of people aren't aware of that option?
I'm actually surprised that it's not discussed more in the real estate market and in the financial institutions, because it's so beneficial, especially for my downsizers and my retirees, because they can benefit the most from this. And as you know, when people are downsizing, they typically have a lot to get rid of, a lot to move. They're usually moving closer to family, so they're also trying to structure their life a certain way. And the reality of trying to buy and sell in the same week for these clients really is very stressful and kind of unrealistic for them when they have these other opportunities while they're trying to negotiate and move at the same time.
Got it. So what are the common mistakes that you see downsizers make during the transition? And are there strategies to avoid those mistakes?
I think the most common mistake is that they're talking to their real estate professionals about all of the things they need, and they're coming up and devising a plan about when to get the house ready to list, what they need to do. They're actively looking for other houses because they're intending typically to pay cash, but they don't actually ever talk to a financial mortgage loan officer like myself to see what all their options are. I usually am being pulled into the conversation because what their original plan they had set for isn't working anymore. And we already have the house listed. We already have houses we love and we want to put contracts on. And we're kind of having to work backwards versus bringing in a really strategic mortgage professional before you ever list your house, especially downsizing, is a critical piece that I think our retirees are missing right now.
I want everyone in our listening audience to hear that bringing in professionals early before you need them to strategize, because that's something that is true kind of throughout the professional world. It's certainly true in our world. I always talk about the 6 Ps. The proper prior planning prevents poor performance. And I know that goes, doubly in your world as well. It is so important. And I hope that wasn't lost on our listeners, that is a real gem of piece of advice there for you to get with your key people early, because what they're going to be able to do is help guide you and navigate you through. And that's what you really, really want. So let's talk about retirees. Let's say they have sold the house and they're sitting on a pile of cash. And a lot of them, I think, assume, hey, I don't want to be in debt. I don't want to take out a mortgage and go through that. I just sold this house. All that money was in my previous house. Why shouldn't I just pay cash for this next one? Is that a wise decision, or are there situations where getting a mortgage makes better fiscal sense?
I love this question. And whenever I meet with my retirees, and I like to call my last time sellers, because the idea is that They're wanting their last home to be the one that they stay in and that they have peace of mind and peace of economy, essentially. They're ready to just rest and enjoy that part of their life. And the thing that I will say is that it really depends on the total portfolio of a client. And when I say portfolio, I don't just mean finances. I'm looking at health factors, I'm looking at family factors, and I'm looking at quality of life factors and really the vision for what retirement means. I like to say I want my clients to be able to retire or live with integrity in the last home. And that's really important because some people, it does not make sense to pay cash for the home. Maybe it makes more sense to have a smaller mortgage. And I'd like to give an example of this.
Of course, go.
Generationally and historically, the idea of a paid off house gives people a lot of financial freedom, especially if they're on fixed income, especially if they've been planning with their financial advisors. And that is all very important. But one of the things that we forget is once the money is sitting in that house, it's no longer making the client any more money. So they're not making any interest on it. It's not growing. It's like burying it underneath the house and it's sitting there underneath the foundation, waiting for it to be sold and then be used again. So they can't have access to it once it's in the house unless they call me or call a lender and pay and qualify to get it out. And for a lot of my retirees, once it's in the house, depending on their fixed income, they will no longer qualify to get that money out again unless they sell or they do a reverse mortgage. So that's one concern for me when people pay full cash. The second thing is we need contingency plans for the things we can't understand or see that might happen. And so I like to talk to my clients' financial advisors to ask them if we were to utilize a smaller mortgage and then give a financial advisor or whoever's maintaining their money the ability to let that money grow or to be available for health benefits or health structures that are happening within the family, then we have some contingencies where that money can grow. And then we use how that money is growing to eventually pay off the mortgage. But they still have access to the funds. And that's really my plea or concern for my retirees is the worst case scenarios versus best case scenarios at times. And there's a pride in having your home paid off. There's a dignity to that that's very important. But there's also again, retiring with integrity means having options when you need them.
Yep.
And so I like to make sure that if it makes sense that we maybe not pay cash for the house. And so it's not a one size fits all, Chris. It really can be complicated, but it's also can be simplified with strategy and conversation. And I don't know enough of my retiree clients are having these conversations before they make this decision.
Well, and I think that is true for so many people out there because they don't think of it as a strategy. They think of it at a transactional level. Hey, I'm going to sell my house. Hey, I'm going to buy my house. And again, you have these gems and I want to highlight them for our listeners. You talked about having a vision for what retirement means to them. And we talk about that with our clients. I'll talk about starting with the end in mind. Like, okay, let's talk about what you want, what is important to you. Because like you said, the answer is not the same for everyone. These are not cookie cutter decisions where it's like, oh, you make this and you have this net worth. Well, this is the right decision for you. The right decision, a lot like with our planning, the right decision is really based on the goals, needs, and desires of our clients, right?
Absolutely. And that's, I joke, my daughter years ago said that her grandparents, my in-laws, are the bosses of fun. And so, and so I meet with a lot of retirees who are moving toward their grandkids to be the bosses of fun. And so I like to ask them, what does that look like for you? What do you want your life to look like? We need to make sure you have that extra ice cream money set aside, for what you want. But that's in the jest part of it. But in the serious part of it, I've had people come in with a spouse who is sick or have something that is weighing on them. And they think that paying cash for the house is going to alleviate some pressure or give them peace, but they can't see the other side of that. What would having a smaller mortgage with some of these funds available and growing, what would that allow for in your life if you needed it? And that's really the question for your audience if they're thinking about downsizing and they're thinking about these things is, what is the economy of your piece for the next phase of life? That's a conversation I have with a lot of my clients. It's not just the economy of their bank account, it's the economy of their piece too.
Yep. I love that. I love that. Now, spoiler alert, this is my favorite question that we have. And you and I have talked about this one before because we had our little strategy session a few weeks back. But this, I think, for our listeners, if you hear the answer to no other question on this podcast, you want to hear this one because I'm telling you, Anna's answer is going to be enlightening. In today's market, when you are sitting there and negotiating a home purchase, what is it more beneficial generally to ask for? Seller paid closing costs or get a lower purchase price of the home? Which one matters more?
Well, when it was funny, I knew that you like this question, and I like when we were in our strategy session because you thought, and I'm not calling you out on this.
No, you should call me out.
It's the most common is most people would think, well, we're going to reduce the purchase price. And there are situations, especially maybe with some of my downsizers, where maybe that makes sense. But I like to use math to help with the emotional part of this. So, the average, let's say closing costs are, I'm going to just use a really even number and just say $10,000. They're typically more than that, but let's just say we have $10,000. If you're going to ask a seller to reduce something, you're either going to ask for price reduction or closing costs because that both reduce their net proceeds. Well, if you ask for a price reduction of $10,000 in today's market, it's going to save a client approximately $60 a month in price reduction. $60 is not chump change. It's not a small amount of money. It's a gas fill up. However, if you ask for $10,000 for buyer's closing costs, and you think about that over a 3-year period, that's about a $277 difference if you divide $10,000 over 3 years. And the reason I bring that up is because if we think about, would you rather have $60,000 every month or have $10,000 in the bank? At least for my first and my second time home buyers and some of my fixed income downsizers, that $10,000 is the difference between a credit card with a 29% interest rate if something happens. It's the difference in putting in a fence in the backyard for the dog. It's the difference of being able to furnish a new home for a first-time home buyer. There's a really big difference in getting closing costs paid for that we really don't think about when we look over the overall economy, both of our bank account and our piece. And so, Chris, to your point, you said, and I think that this is why this is important. Yeah, but I'm looking at $10,000 price reduction over 30 years. And this is where the math really makes sense. The average first-time home buyer stays in a house no more than 5 years. So we're not looking at a 30-year rate of return on this. We're looking at a 5-year return. And the average second-time home buyer stays in at about 7 years. So we're not looking at 30-year math. We're actually looking at the math of the average American and what does $10,000 do in their pocketbook versus $60 a month right now. And I would argue
that's the magic. How long they stay in the home. And that's always the one. And that's why you have experts, because Anna, you know stuff like that. I don't. And I don't think the average home buyer knows that, because that's the mistake I was making. I was thinking, well, over 30 years, the course of this mortgage, of course, that's going to be more beneficial. But that's not the reality, is it?
It's not. And I will tell you, for my first-time home buyers, they're working hard just to save up down payment and have reserves in the bank. I would much rather them negotiate $10,000 and then have $10,000 sitting in their bank account that they didn't have to use, because that's their rainy day fund. For my second-time home buyers or my move-up buyers, they're looking at kiddos and cars and things of that nature. And so $10,000 for them is going to be a difference in how they structure their second home and building that life versus that $60 a month. And again, the average home buyer, really 7 years is the max that most people stay in a home. And so if you are someone who knows this is a long-term home, then we're going to re-strategize this. Remember, I'm not a one-size-fits-all person with mortgages, because money and life isn't one-size-fits-all. But on average, the math usually will tell you those closing costs make a big difference. And here's the caveat too, that I think people forget about. When you reduce the price of a home in a neighborhood, you have now set the market value for that entire neighborhood. So I joke, do you want to lower the purchase price by $25,000 in the neighborhood and move in? Because your neighbors aren't going to want to invite you to game night if you just told them their houses are $25,000 less. So you're also really setting the stage for the market value when we reduce purchase price in an area. And that's really important to think about when you're asking for things.
That is so insightful. And we're going to run this podcast a little long. I know ours tend to be a little shorter, but there are a couple more questions I want to get in. But it is just the insightfulness that you bring to the table is so wonderful for our listeners. And here's the next kind of scenario we have, and we see this a lot. We see more and more families, and they're choosing multi-generational living arrangements. And so they're doing, I call it the one big happy family or the family compound. And what financing options are available when adult children and aging parents purchase a home together? And are there special considerations families should address before jointly applying for a mortgage? What are the worries? What are the concerns there?
I would say this is the biggest uptick in trends in home buying right now is multi-generational home buying, and there's different ways this looks. But I do have a lot of families coming to me with adult children whose parents are retiring. They're going to sell their house, and then they're looking to reallocate those funds to then move in with those adult children, and then work through how to do that. So there's obviously the real estate side, and I'm going to stay away from the real estate side in terms of finding the right property for that. That's a different caveat here. But from a financial standpoint, the most important conversations that need to happen, and they also often happen with me in the room, but they need to happen together before they meet with me usually, is who's going to go on the mortgage and who's going on the deed, who's putting down money, and what happens if someone no longer is living in that group of people, who gets the house,
Yep.
who gets the money. And this is where I trust you. And this is why I use you personally, but recommend so many people to, is because these are those conversations they need to understand for their entirety of their estate planning, and not just with the mortgage side. But I find it really interesting that everybody has the idea. Everybody knows they want to do it. Everybody knows why they want to do it, but they haven't had those harder conversations. And it's really important because it changes once one of those, in one of those factors, whether it's the adult child or the parent. If one passes or something changes in their arrangement, they need to have, like you said, the end result in mind so that we can then come back and structure the mortgage, the deed, and the money all the right way for them based off what they want.
Yeah. And you've said it. We talk to clients all the time about this. If you're going to do the multi-generational thing, that's great. The multi-generational participants all have to have their estate planning tidied up, because you can't go into a joint ownership of a home with your child and your child not have an estate plan. And then their estate goes intestate. And the next thing you know, mom and dad own the home with maybe an in-law, a surviving spouse, or some children, and they might even be minor children if there's some tragic event, and you can really get some odd outcomes. And so incredibly important, so incredibly important. Many families are going a little slightly different. Instead of just buying the home together, they talk about building a mother-in-law suite or an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, to keep loved ones close. What are the financing options available for those that want to go that route with their property?
That's actually very common, and I helped a family do that at the end of last year, and it worked out really well. The adult son lives here, and his mother lived out west, and we found this beautiful property that had an ADU to an attached dwelling unit. And the way that we did that one, and this is very common, is that usually if the adult children qualify, they're going to buy the house, and then the parent is going to move in. Now, one of the things that's very common, it's not really a loan product, it's just a structure of a loan, is what we call gift funds. It's very common for adult children to receive funds from their parents or grandparents for any type of real estate transaction that's for primary residence. But specifically in this situation, the mother was selling her home and moving here and was able to provide a large amount of the down payment so that it made the mortgage for the total group of people living there more affordable, because usually properties that have an attached dwelling unit or extra units like that are going to be more expensive. And so she was able to gift those funds and use that as part of the down payment. And then we were able to qualify the son on a bigger house with a lower mortgage because she was able to bring those funds to the table. And so that's really the most common way that I see this. And can I give a caveat on gift funds? Because
please do.
That phrasing in my world is different than in your world.
It is.
And so in the lending space, gift funds are simply funds that are being given without any receipt of a loan or for payback in the future. That's why we call it gift funds. Now, I always tell people I'm not a CPA and I'm also not an estate planner. So we always want our especially our retirees to talk to their folks and their trusted people about what's the implication of that if they were to pass and or from a tax purpose. But there are a lot of misconceptions around gift funds when it comes from a tax standpoint. And I actually have a very long video that I made about this with a CPA. But in terms of actual being able to do it, it's the most common that allows for especially adult children to buy a bigger home, and then that parent can move in. We do this quite often for our families.
Got it. Well, we've run a little long, and so I do want to give you the opportunity. Because you have such amazing advice, do you have any parting advice or one thing you want our listeners to walk away from today's conversation?
I would say that the misconception with a mortgage lender is that we are simply here to give you a loan, and that loan is what you probably have traditionally thought about in the past. But the lending space gives so much opportunity and strategy for you to create the next life you want through money and mortgage. And I say have the conversation quicker with the mortgage lender than you do. I think people bring us in too late, and they would have better options and better opportunity if they would bring us in sooner.
I love it. Anna, this has been amazing for our listeners out there. If you have mortgage questions and you are not sure where to go or what to do, pick up that phone and give Anna a call. I know you'll be in a better space for doing so. Anna, thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise, and helping us all better understand how thoughtful mortgage planning can support financial stability and long-term goals as we age. These are important conversations, and your insights have been incredibly valuable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I always say that your future is our focus, and I absolutely love being able to share my knowledge and my information, and I appreciate your time and I respect you guys. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. This has been another episode of Aging Starts Now. We look forward to you guys listening to our next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Aging Starts Now podcast. For more information about today's show, visit tn-elderlaw.com, click on the Free Resources tab, and then click on Aging Starts Now. You'll find the show notes there. And while you're at it, why not check out all the free resources available at tn-elderlaw.com. Document downloads, the Johnson McGinnis blog, educational videos, informative articles, helpful links, a TV show, and more. It's all there, free for the taking. If you enjoy listening to the Aging Starts Now podcast, please subscribe, rate the show, or leave us a review. It's easy to do on whatever app you use to listen. We would love your feedback on the show. Aging Starts Now. We'll be back next week with more candid discussions about the challenges created by aging, disability, and unexpected illness.